stand on your knees.
Linda, I'm as close as you are. You're just short.
So excited to learn from you, Linda and Michael. Thank you for doing this. Awesome.
Donna, you want to start letting people in from the waiting room then?
I just did.
All right. Amy and Mary, you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Just let me know when it's time.
1 minute.
Okay. Amy, I'll go and then you can go, okay? And then we'll turn it back over to Jeannie.
Jeannie, why don't you take care of, can you admit people?
Sure.
You should be able to disable the waiting room.
Yeah, I'll do that. I can do that.
Thanks, Amy.
There you go.
I knew she should be a co-host.
How do you do that? I've never done that.
Oh, it's easy.
Just go to the 3 little dots underneath the participant section and you click enable, which really means disable the waiting room. Yep.
I don't see that.
Yeah, it's where if you go under where the names are, you'll see it says invite, mute all, and then there'll be 3 little dots. If you click on the 3 little dots, you'll see enable waiting room. And if it's not checked, it's just been disabled.
Okay. Good to know. Because that's annoying. All right.
As is, yeah.
All right. I am going to hop off. My audio is not working from Katie.
All right. I suppose it's 6:30. Go ahead there, Mary.
Okay, it's time to start.
Let's welcome everybody.
Yeah, welcome. I'm so glad that looks like we have 213 participants at the moment, which is really exciting. My name is Mary Newton. I'm the president of the Reading League Wisconsin. And Jeannie Chop, who is also involved with the Science of Reading Facebook group from Wisconsin, is also on our board of directors. So we frequently do events together. And so that's what we're doing tonight. So I'm pleased to have her on here with me. I'm going to be putting up a link in the chat for those of you who need a certificate of attendance. Toward the end of the presentation, I'll post that in the chat box, and then it'll be a link to a form. All you need to do is click on there, fill out the form, and submit it. And then we'll be sending out certificates later in October via email. So you'll get that in your email inbox. So look for that. It'll be coming from Reading League Wisconsin. So I want to introduce my other board member colleague, Amy McGovern. Amy?
Hi everyone. My goodness, 242 and climbing. So glad you're all here. I'm the vice president of the Wisconsin chapter. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, so I'm really glad to be here and we're excited to learn from Linda and Michael. And if we're ready, we should turn it over to them unless anyone else needs to introduce.
Yeah, I'll get a chance to introduce
go ahead,
them.
Jeannie.
So I'm
Great.
Jeannie Shop. I'm a reading specialist in the Sturgeon Bay School District. I am the administrator of Wisconsin Science of Reading Facebook page, Literacy Task Force. And as Mary said, I'm also a board member of the Reading League Wisconsin. So I have the honor to introduce our special guests tonight. Linda Farrell and Michael Hunter. They are founding partners of the Readsters in Alexandria, Virginia. They work nationally in schools, helping educators implement instruction that ensures all students learn to read. The process always starts with using the right data to select appropriate instruction. Their favorite work is modeling in the classroom and coaching teachers. Linda and Michael have presented workshops about effective instruction for beginning and struggling readers for more than 20 years. They have written phonics curricula for struggling readers and diagnostic assessments to pinpoint decoding difficulties. Linda is instructor in looking at reading interventions on the Reading Rockets website. Michael is featured in videos used to demonstrate effective teaching techniques in letters modules. In the last several years, Linda and Michael have worked in West Africa developing early reading curricula for children to learn to read in 7 African languages with transparent orthographies, and they don't speak any of the languages. So here's Linda and Michael, the fantastic duo that's going to help us understand decodables and when to use leveled readers. So bring it on, Linda and Michael.
Jeannie,
Hey,
thank
thank
you.
you.
That was a very nice introduction. Well, we are going to talk about decodable and leveled readers. And for me, I can hardly say hello in an hour. So we're going to get started right now. If you happened to download the slides that are on the, I think Donna put them up someplace. If you happen to download the slides, you won't have in the packet that we sent any slides that have the red headers on them, because you don't need them, or they're answer slides. So that's just to let you know that if the header up here is in purple, then you will have that slide. And we do have some objectives. I'm not going to read these because you can read these, but the main objective we have is for you to walk out of here being able confidently to know the differences between decodable and leveled readers, what purposes they serve for early reading, and then just maybe some guidelines about when to use them or not. That's it. If you better understand the difference between decodable and leveled readers and how they can be used for early readers, we'll be happy, right? Yep. So this is a warning. When there are leveled readers all the way up to high school, just to let you know, when we're talking about what we're talking about today is for early reading instruction. And when I should really have emphasized instruction. And the reason is that we are not, when we say use decodable readers, we are not saying don't ever let a kid touch a book that isn't decodable. Michael, do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, fundamentally, what we're going to be talking about with the decodables is decodables have a particular purpose in instruction, and you'll see that leveled readers have a particular use in instruction, and they're different, and they should be used in the appropriate manner. And that's what we're going to outline.
And when we talk about using decodable readers for instruction, we're talking about for phonics instruction, for teaching children the decoding side of the simple view of reading.
Exactly.
And there are times to use it.
But one more thought on that just real quickly is that what we're saying is kids can pick up any book they want to pick up at any time other than during instruction. And of course, we encourage that. We're not trying to limit what kids are looking at.
So let's start out with leveled readers. We'll talk about somebody has their microphone off or on. Can we make sure?
I just muted everyone. Linda and Michael, if you want to unmute, you'll be good to go.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to start out with leveled readers. And everybody's heard of leveled readers. You've seen leveled readers. Most people have worked with leveled readers, but we're going to get a little deeper into leveled readers. Now, again, when we talked about this, when we're talking about decodable and leveled readers, we're talking about leveled readers at the lower end of levels, not talking about Z or Y according to Fontes and Pinnell. If you're looking at Fontes and Pinnell, we're really going to be suggesting that you rely more on decodable readers all the way up to about level J. If you have to give Fontes and Pinnell, lots of schools have to give a Fontes and Pinnell or a leveled reading. And we want you to be very aware that below level J, in our experience, no research behind this, just our experience, is that the children are very likely to still need some decoding instruction. And if they're in levels A, B, C, or D, they do need decoding instruction. That's just a rule. So if you don't use Fontes and Pinnell, then what you might use are some others, and there are lots of different levels. So this is just one chart from Houghton Mifflin showing the different comparison levels if you're using DRA. This is another one from Reading A to Z. I know a lot of people use leveled readers from Reading A to Z, comparing them. One thing I find interesting is that you can see on the Reading A to Z level, this is the Reading A to Z, and then this is, this is Fontes and Pinnell, and they have Fontes and Pinnell level J as grade 1. But if you look here, they have Fontes and Pinnell level H as grades 1 and 2. So one of the things that you're going to find is that there isn't consistency in leveled readers. Now we'll start talking about what are level readers? How do you describe a level reader? Well, we went to different websites to find out how leveled reader publishers describe leveled readers. And they are predictable. They're often predictable, about familiar subjects. They have strong support for the text from the pictures. They may and most often do include a number of high frequency words. These are early leveled readers, and they repeat words with support from the pictures for the with support for the pictures for the words that the children may not know. Okay, the leveled readers. How do they get the level? What do they do to get a leveled reader? Well, basically what they do is they count the words in the whole reader. They count the words in sentences. The shorter the sentences, the lower the level. They look at the length of words as part of their criteria. So the shorter the words, the lower. They also try to be about stories or subjects that are interesting to students. So, because remember, when you're doing balanced literacy, which leveled readers are at the core of balanced literacy, then it's always you're reading for meaning, enjoyment, etc. And then some leveled readers will have word banks, and they will only use a certain number of words in level A, and then they'll move to level B and add some more words so that they're not using a huge corpus of words. And that allows the students to memorize those words because they've seen them over and over and over, is the theory. In fact, let's look at the theory or the premise behind leveled readers. Do you want to talk about this, or do you want me to?
Sure. So the premise for leveled readers is fundamentally that students are going to learn to read words by just being exposed to them. Repeated exposure, repeated exposure. When they get to a word they don't know or haven't seen before, they're encouraged to use the pictures that are in the book or the context around the word, what the words they do know, to guess the new word. Because guessing is sort of at the core of all of this, accuracy is not as important as comprehension or getting to the meaning is. The key with the premise level, the leveled readers, excuse me, is that as long as the students get the gist, they understand what's going on, they're getting the meaning, that's considered reading. And that's behind the premise there. Sometimes they do recognize phonics patterns and encourage students to look at the letters to figure out words they don't already know. But the first two options are to use your context and use your pictures to guess what the words are. And if that fails you, then you might actually look at the letters in the words. And we've talked about that they're interesting content, because interesting content is what the students already know about, which gives them the context to be able to guess any of the words that they don't know how to read.
And also that they want to, in guided reading, which is where you use these leveled books, they want to be able to have discussions about them. It's very important to have discussions afterward. So I want you to look at this, and then we're going to go to the next one, which is, what are the criteria for leveling books? Well, we went to the website and for Fountas and Pinnell. And what we found is that these are what they used as the criteria for leveling books. How long is the book? What's the size of the type and the layout of the print? Is it easy on the eye or is it more dense? What kind of vocabulary and concepts? The harder the vocabulary, the harder the concepts to understand, maybe something that would be new to the student, the higher the level. Language structure. And I don't know exactly what they meant by that, but I think that you can put language structure and predictability and pattern of language together. Is it easy to understand? How easy is the text structure? How easy is the genre? And supportive illustrations, so that if the children don't know the word or they don't get it, they can look at the picture even and figure out what's going on in the story. They don't really even have to read the book to understand the story, because it's all about getting to the comprehension. Now we went to Reading A to Z and we looked at their criteria. Now, Fountas and Pinnell are the grandparents. They're the originators of leveled reading. And what we find is that A to Z and a number of other leveled readers, they have to have more criteria because they have to differentiate themselves. And what I would like to do is give you guys about 10 seconds to read this and see if you found anything that has to do with phonics, with different spelling patterns. Could you find it, Michael?
I've never been able to find it.
If anybody can find anything that has to do with spelling patterns, that we want to have simple spelling patterns, could you please unmute and show me where it is? Ah, what a surprise. We have at least 230 people and no one could find it because it's not there. It's never a consideration that they have short vowels or that they
which are one letter, one sound.
Yeah. And in fact, it's real interesting. I was up in Connecticut speaking to some teachers, and they were insistent that leveled readers were working, but they'd given a survey to show that their children didn't know short vowels, that were having difficulty with short vowels. So they wanted to know which leveled readers should they use to teach short vowels that only had short vowels. And I had to explain, I can't give you a leveled reader for that because that isn't how leveled readers are put together.
If they can't read vowels, there
can't
are
read.
no leveled readers without vowels,
And if
except
you-
the picture books.
Yeah, if you're in this group, you know that short vowels, more words have short vowel patterns than any other pattern except schwa. And you can't read if you don't understand. You can't decode if you don't understand short vowels. So just very interesting. I want to read this to you from Flint Cooter, which is an informal reading inventory book. And they are talking about in their book, guided reading levels A to D. And this is what they say about them. Michael, would you read that, please?
Okay. Assumption at this level. When students encounter an unknown word in print, they can easily use context from known words and illustrations, along with language pattern cues and early word analysis skills for successful decoding.
So you can see that Flint Cooter is referencing Fountas and Pinnell levels A to D, and they're saying, don't expect the kids to read. They use other ways. They use context, other strategies. They use context, they use illustrations, pictures, and early word analysis. If I didn't take this out of the book, but early word analysis means looking at the first letter. That's what early word analysis is. So we're not making this up, you all. This is what leveled readers are about. Here is an example of an early emergent leveled reader from Houghton Mifflin. And you can see that says, this is an orange. And if you don't know the word orange, you look at the picture. This is a banana. If you don't know the word banana, you look at the picture, and presumably they will get this is an or this is a because they're repeated on every page. And remember, Michael told you that children are going to learn by exposure. So they're going to know this is an. They don't have to know orange. Now, I have children who tell me, Miss Linda, I don't even have to look at the words to read this book. And that's what it's meant to be. It's meant to be, if you don't know how to read the words, there are lots of other ways that you can figure out. There are 3 other ways that you can figure out what's on the page. And just out of curiosity, I'm just going to call on someone because I can see their name. Mary Newton, could you unmute, please?
Okay.
Okay, the next picture is of apples. What do you think? And lots of apples and 1 apple. What do you think the page says?
I think it probably says, this is an apple.
Wow, you read it and you can't even see it.
Yeah, yes. Isn't that okay? Thank you very much.
The weird thing is one of the pages has an egg.
Yeah, they're all fruits except then there's an egg. And we
We've
could
never
never
been able to
really
figure out
figure
why.
that out. The last page is an egg. Otherwise, you could talk about fruits. Okay, this is an emergent level. This is the next level up. And Michael, why don't you talk about this and I'll talk about teaching with it.
Okay. So the book is A Mosquito Buzzed, and it may be hard for you to see, but the mosquito is over top of the baby bear's head there. And there's the word buzz is covered up by this text box here, but buzz goes across the spread of the page, and that goes across every time you open a spread like this, the mosquito buzzes across the page. What else do you want me to tell them?
Well,
I'm not sure.
Okay, and so this page, remember, this is the next level up. So can you see that there's more text on the page? And one of the things that happens is it's still repeated because every page has this same verbiage, except instead of baby bear, it's mama bear or papa bear on the next 2 pages. And then something similar gets repeated and repeated. Now, my favorite part of this is that this book is from Houghton Mifflin. Houghton Mifflin does have phonics lessons, and then they have guided reading lessons where they use the leveled books. This book would be used when they're teaching short vowels. And I just want you to imagine that maybe the day that they're using this book, they taught QU in their phonics lesson. So they taught QU, and you've got Tommy Turtle. He's what we have Sally Skilled and Tommy Turtle. And you've got Tommy Turtle who really struggles. Oh my gosh, he struggles with phonics. Quit. It's so hard for him to blend those letter sounds. And then he comes over and the teacher's taught QU over there. So there's a QU word here, and he's reading, and he reads, he can't read these words, but he goes, ba, and the teacher can say, oh, look over here. Which bear is this? And he goes, oh, baby bear. So she's encouraging him to look at the picture and guess. So over the, and Tommy's pretty bright. Over there, it's really hard for him to decode. But here, oh, baby bear was sleeping. And then he doesn't know that word. And she says snore. Oh, snore, snore, snore. So she's giving him hints to guess the words. Now, I just want you to think about Tommy when he's on his own and he's looking at a book on his own. Do you think that he's going to guess because it's easy or sound out words because it's hard? Well, of course he's going to guess because that's easy for him, and he's developing a bad habit right there. So even if we're teaching decoding, we're negating our decoding when we go to teach these strategies of guessing. And then I want you to notice there's a QU here in mosquito. Now, I'm not even going to tell you that Tommy would notice the QU. But if Tommy did notice the QU, what sound does QU spell in mosquito? Not as we've taught him over in our phonics lesson. I also want you to know we're trying to get Tommy to look at patterns when we're in the short vowel in teaching patterns. Do you want to talk about the patterns?
Sure. Okay, Tommy's in phonics, he's learning that you pay attention to the letters and that there's spelling patterns. And maybe
Buzz.
Buzz would be a word he could actually decode possibly. But I want you to look at this and notice that there's another pattern, EAR, and we see it actually 3 times in this text. So in baby bear, what does the EAR spell?
Air.
Right. Okay. And so we got it there. And oh boy, I bet when I get down here, this next word has that EAR. So I'll read nair. But it's not. It's what? Near. Oh, and over here, we've got it by itself and it's ear again. So which is it? Is it ear or air?
And again, they're just not set up to encourage systematic learning of decoding. In fact, they're set up to discourage it.
Or at the very least, confuse you.
So we talked about leveled readers. Now we're going to talk about decodable readers. And did I go too far? Oh, okay. Oops, did it again. Okay, decodable readers, you guys, you know this if you're in this workshop, but I'm going to go over it anyhow, because these are the contrasts that exist between decodable and leveled readers. Decodable readers, they only have words with phonics patterns that have been taught and some high frequency words that have been taught. Now, it doesn't mean every word has been taught. For example, if the children know the short E and all the consonant, single consonant sounds, they can read fez. They may not know what a fez is, but they can read fez. And if there's a picture of it, then I can point to it and say, but they don't look at the picture to figure out what the word is. They read the word first. And then if they don't know what it means, we explain what it means. Subject matter is secondary to the decodability of the words. So you all, in a leveled reader, the first thing is they want an interesting subject. You know, if you've read decodable readers, if you have flyleaf decodable readers, they are lovely. They have wonderful, wonderful stories. They're not all 100% decodable. If you look at any other decodable books that we know about, and geodes are good, but they're only about 85% decodable, we write them. It's hard to write a good story with just short A and short I. That's very difficult. So subject matter is secondary to the decodability of the story. They start with consonant, vowel, consonant, short vowel words, one syllable, and move to more complex spelling patterns. The focus when you're reading in decodable readers is accurate decoding more than comprehension. Now, people have said to me, you don't care about comprehension. Of course I care about comprehension. Most children, by far most children, if they can read it accurately, they can understand it. So I will ask literal comprehension questions, just a couple, to make sure they're getting it. But you guys, I don't know about you, if you've ever used these. I've used decodable readers. I've used power readers with children when I go into schools and model. And I've had children who will say to me, they're reading it to me, and then the bell rings. And so we have to move to the next, ding, ding, move to the next. But I want to know if the fish got the cat or the cat got the fish. And I can't even remember that there's a fish in the story. It's so boring. But it's not boring to them.
Because they can read it.
They can read it and they think it's cool that they get to read a story. So it's about I don't have to talk a lot about whether the fish got the cat. There's just not a lot of inference there. And the pictures, if there are pictures, they support the story, but they're not specific to the words. And I'm going to show you an example of what I mean about that. So what's the premise for decodable readers? Remember, the premise for leveled readers was that if you're exposed to reading and you see words over and over, then you'll memorize those. And if you don't know the word, you can look at the picture, and then because you'll get that word, now you can memorize that word. We all know the problem is they memorize the wrong word, or they think they know the word and they don't know the word. In decodable readers, the reason that you use decodable readers is because students develop good habits at the beginning by utilizing all the letters in the word to read it. They start with simple patterns and they get very good at that. Go ahead.
Also, the whole point of decoding and learning to decode is you are, if you think about brain scans and what we've learned about the brain and developing readers, is you're setting the wiring, that what hopefully will become an automatized wiring, a neural pathway in the brain that makes decoding so easy you can do it without thinking about it, because that's the goal. And if you are, you have to start at the beginning, work with the easy words to decode, and that's where you learn how to pay attention to the letters, to think about the sounds, put them all together. And it is effortful at first, but then eventually, with enough practice, it becomes automatic, and then you can increase the difficulty and the complexity of the spelling patterns, not necessarily meaning. And that's the point of the decodables. And it's that practice piece. The decodables are not teaching you to read, they're allowing you to practice the skill that you have to develop to that automaticity.
I love the way that Michael, I always forget to say this, talks about developing those neural pathways so you don't have to think. And you can think about when you got your driver's license, that when you first were practicing, or you're teaching your children, you're practicing. I mean, I can remember saying to my father, I cannot look in the rearview mirror and put my foot on the brake at the same time. I am sorry, but that is just too much to do. And oh, now you want me to look in the side view. You know, that was all so hard at first. Now.
Well, my analogy is, you don't have to answer this, but how many of you drive and you do everything that you shouldn't be doing behind the wheel, and you're still on the road and still driving? So you're eating a Big Mac, you're swatting at the kids in the back seat, adjusting the radio, I hope not texting at least, but you know, we all do stuff we shouldn't do behind the wheel. And the reason we can do that now, as opposed to when we were first learning to read, is what? We developed automaticity. You don't, most of the time that you're driving, you don't have to pay a lot of conscious attention. You don't have to think about driving. You just do it and it happens. And occasionally something unusual happens, and then you're suddenly like, oh my gosh, I really better pay attention. But by that time, your foot's already hit the brake. You've already steered back in the lane without you even thinking about it. And your brain hasn't even caught up with what your automatic body has done.
We've probably driven this metaphor into the ground, but I have one other thing to say about it. And that is, when I learned to drive, my father took me to a parking lot, and we drove in a parking lot. And then we moved to go to drive on country roads that didn't. So it was a protected environment so that I could learn without having accidents. And decodable books are your protected environment for those children so that they can do it right. They don't learn things that are going to get in the way later. And I'm going to leave that.
Developing a habit of reading accurately should occur before fluency is expected.
Yeah.
So the first part of that sentence is what we were talking about. Don't worry about fluency.
Don't worry about rate. Yeah.
The rate piece, it will come for most kids once they become automatic.
And then the other difference is that comprehension is taught when you're really teaching comprehension skills. It's taught when the teacher reads aloud and the teacher leads discussions. That's when they're developing those nice comprehension skills, when they can't read the more complex texts themselves. We don't want to dummy down what we're teaching in comprehension, because if the children can only read a very simple book, we want to make sure that we're teaching comprehension that's equal to their language skills, not just to their decoding skills. So this is one of my favorite things that happened. This is a story from Power Readers. We will disclose Susan Evers is a friend of ours, but these are, even if she weren't, these are very good decodable readers. Okay, this is obviously to teach short U, and I was in a class that was incorporating decodable readers into their guided reading. And I was in the school observing, and I happened to go in on Friday. And they had read this book. They were now on Friday. So they had this small group instruction, had read this book 5 days in a row. This was the 5th day, and then they talked about something every time. So today the teacher asked some child, or maybe all of them, why is Gus in the tub? And I don't know if you guys ever have this, but do you ever have your thought bubble and don't let that come out your mouth right now? But my thought bubble was, because she's obviously trying to get to have them think about the text. Now, remember, this is the 5th day. I didn't see first days 1, 2, 3, and 4. And my thought bubble is, well, Gus is in the tub that has mud because they all have short U's. That's why. There's nothing to talk about. I mean, there's certainly not 5 days of discussion about Gus in the tub. The way decodables work is not that you read them every day and talk about them. You read them until the children can read them. 100% accuracy. And then you move to the next one. And then you move to the next one. And then you move to the next one. Ask literal questions. You can ask a literal question. Do you think it's summer or winter? And now you wouldn't ask that if you lived in Southern California, because the sun's out all the time in Southern California. But what I'm saying is ask something easy to ask, and then move on. Use your 1/2 hour or 20 minutes or 40 minutes that you have for beginning reading instruction to teach the kids how to decode. Go talk about, you can read wonderful stories later and ask the children all kinds of wonderful questions that are inferential, that they have to talk about their experience. I mean, they can learn about animals, but this is not to learn about pigs. You would not even want to say pigs like to be in mud. Did someone want to add something to that? No? Okay. You want to say anything else about Gus? Because there's nothing else to say.
Linda, there was a question.
Okay.
The question was, how long should students stay in decodable text until when can they use something that's less controlled?
Okay, we are going to get to that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, we'll get to that. What I want you to know is, as with every single thing in reading, there is no answer. There is no one answer. There are guidelines. And so whenever we're talking, we're giving you guidelines. Michael said it's for accuracy, and decodable books are for accuracy. But some children who read extremely slowly need to read, once they can read the text accurately, go back and read it so they read with, like they talk, is what we say. Just read it like you talk. Might be the 5th time they've read it, but we've got to make sure that they understand that reading is not a word by word reading. And I would say that's 1 out of 25 kids that I work with. I mean, it's not very many, but, and sometimes you let them go back and read it again because they were a little stilted the first time. And then that gives them exposure to these words and these patterns. That's great. And that is the art of teaching, not the science of teaching. The science of teaching is that you teach short vowels first. The art of teaching, systematically, explicitly. The art is how long do you practice? And even that can be a little bit science if you test for mastery. Okay, remember I told you I'd show you a decodable book with illustrations that don't give away the story, the words in the story. This says, Vet Dan got Big Ben for me. If the student looked up for vet, he would say doctor. Do you see how that's not giving away the story? Now this says Big Ben can sit, and maybe they would look up, but I'm telling you, if they can read Big Ben, they're not going to have to look up and read can sit. And you guys, another thing, I don't think we have a slide on this, but I think I'm going to just throw in, one of the reasons for decodable readers versus leveled readers is to teach children to keep their eyes on the words when they're reading, because they can read it. They don't have to look up at you. When kids have we're reading leveled readers, when they come to a book, a word they don't know, it's natural for them to look up. And in fact, if you start looking, you'll see that lots of children do look up. Decodable readers teach them, you keep your eyes on the words. You don't have to look up to find a new word. You can figure out that new word on your own. So now let's compare decodable and leveled readers. We're okay on time. But I do want to say, don't go throw away all your leveled readers. Keep them. They have very good purposes for early literacy, just not teaching kids how to read print. That is something they should not be used for. Okay.
Linda, one more question for you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
There was a question about how decodable should a decodable book be? And I know Wiley Blevins gives one answer, a little bit less maybe, but I'm curious, the group is interested in how decodable you both feel they should be.
Well, I feel that at the short vowel level, they should be 100% decodable. And then as you build, and I'm not talking about children who struggle learning to read. I'm talking about if you give Dibbles or Ames Webb, I'm talking about the benchmark and above, and then the middle of the strategic, the yellow kids. Those kids are by the time, we're going to show you this, but by the time they know short vowels and a couple of other syllable patterns, they're ready for non-decodable text, or at least text that's 85%, not purely decodable.
And also, just to be clear, when Linda says 100% decodable, that does include some high frequency, irregularly spelled words that they have been taught, because you can't have pure decodable. There are going to be some high frequency words that are not regularly spelled.
I use decodable sometimes that don't fit the scope and sequence for for the school I'm in, whatever their curriculum is. If the book, which really good decodables at the CVC level at least, will have all the words that are in the book, these are the decodable words, if I think that they don't know one, we might review all the high frequency words. And then when they're reading, if I haven't taught it to them, then especially if it's a high frequency word like of, then I might give it to them as if they haven't had that one yet.
Need it.
Yeah, if they need it.
The point is, you don't hold them accountable
I don't
for
hold
reading
them,
that accurately. If they need help, they get help.
Donna, does that answer the question?
Yes, I think it does.
With a non-answer. Our recommendation is 100% decodable at first. You might only need that for 2 days with a kid, but make sure they can read 100% decodable CBC before you move on to something else. Okay, let's talk about this, because I do want you to know there is great value for leveled readers, and I'm going to early leveled readers, and the best value I think is for ELL kids or low language kids. You saw the book that we talked about, that we showed you. This is an apple, this is a banana, this is a grape, this is whatever. You guys, those stories, don't have them read them to an ELL kid. You can read them to them, and they can learn what an orange is. You can also talk about how an orange is if you have Spanish, for example, called a naranja I think that's it, in Spanish. And what I'm saying is that they are very good for developing oral language, because that's what they're built for. They're made to have interest, be useful for discussions. So oral language, especially for low language, native English speakers or ELs, English learners. And remember, you can read the books to them.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, because they're leveled, you can be sure that, you're working at a language level that they can handle.
Mhm. You can read the story. You can read a sentence to them in one of the, like say a D or an E level, read a sentence to the kids and have it put in their own words. I mean, there are just all kinds of things, if you get creative, that you can use those leveled books. Those are the things that are not what you would want to use decodable books for, because they have stilted syntax. Oh my gosh, often they have
yeah, 'cause
stilted syntax.
the verbs, simple verbs tend to be irregular, and it's really hard to write decodables without them.
So, and word identification strategies, you guys, this is a comparison. Decodable readers is sound out the word. That's it. That's your strategy. Where leveled readers, they give you all kinds of options to what they call, the big word is solve, and it's solve the word. We don't solve the
They
word.
aren't puzzles.
It's telling you, that word is speaking to you. It is telling you exactly what it is in a CVC word. So, okay, anybody else have a question? Anything else? No?
There was
Okay,
one
good.
question earlier, Linda. What about
Okay.
independent reading, free choice reading? Can kids read a variety of books during free choice independent reading?
Okay, it's up. Yes, they can. But what I can tell you is that if I had children who couldn't read, I would probably encourage them to get with a buddy and read a decodable reader together. But of course, that's what we're saying. This using only decodable readers is for decoding instruction. It's for your small group instruction and your center work when you're working on that. That's what we're talking about as far as decodable work. For independent,
Yes.
shoot, we've taught kids, we have a pretty good library of kids' books, and we teach kids who are working, like third and fourth graders who are working on short vowels, and they'll go over and pick up a book on dinosaurs, or if it's a boy, Roman gladiators or something like that. Great. They're looking at this book while telling us they don't care if they know how to read. But so does that answer the question? That's an art for you as a teacher, but certainly
Yeah.
don't discourage kids from being
No, no, no.
excited about books.
No, we want them to be excited about books, but we also want them to be excited about learning how to read those books. And the way we do that is teach them how to read them.
Yeah.
Um,
So.
And again, Decodables is for practice.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
the truth is, once you know your letter names and letter sounds that can blend three sounds, at that point, it is practice. You don't have to teach them anything new, particularly,
Yeah.
and then you get to digraphs, and now you get to teach something new.
So independent reading is, I'm going to tell you what we do with our schools. What we say is when there's independent reading, if you have kids that are behind, you get those kids in a group and you work with those kids.
You have
So
them practice
you
with
have,
Decodable.
it's just more practice for them. And we have never had a teacher tell us that the kids mind, because they want to learn to read. Even if they tell you they don't, they do. So that's what we advise, but just in general, don't discourage kids from liking books. Okay, so this is just a summary of the usefulness of beginning decodable, usefulness of the two types of books. Decodable readers are for practice reading phonics patterns and high frequency words. They develop accuracy and literal comprehension if a child needs that. Most of the time they don't, because decodable readers are just so easy to understand. As far as language comprehension, that's what leveled readers are for. You can do read alouds. Sometimes I have schools who say we have to do guided reading. Okay, you can do echo reading where they point to the word, but don't have the kids practice incorrect, those strategies that are look at the picture, etc. Really good for oral discussion. And I forgot to say this, developing concepts of print. If you have a kindergartner who hasn't read books at home, teach them there's spaces between words, there's a period, there's capital letter, print starts from here to here. They don't have to read to know that. So they're really good for that. But most.
And you can literally extend what's in those books. If you go back and think of that simple one about foods, You could do a whole thing on shapes or a whole thing on colors. Yeah, you can, there's meat of some sort there that you can work with
From language
for
comprehension.
language, all for
Yes.
language, developing vocabulary and concepts in language orally.
Mhm. Okay. And this next one is a lot of print that you have if you have the handouts to give you more detail on what we just talked about. So let's talk about some general guidelines. This is going to answer, we're going to get to the answer to the question about when do you,
Then can you move away from
yeah.
the
you want to go?
Sure. Well, we have guidelines, and there are 3 basic guidelines here. And the first is you have to be able to demonstrate mastery of decoding real and nonsense CVC words. So that's mastery, and it needs to be moving towards automaticity,
And
really.
it's,
And it's in isolation. Thank you. Yes, in isolation, so that you're not having any context there to guide you to what the word should be. You read it as it's written. And nonsense words is a good way to assess that for that reason. Students need to be able to decode 2-syllable words and known 3-syllable words in isolation again. And then once you get to the multi-syllable, you're going to have to start dealing with the schwa. And these are short vowel, all short vowel syllables. But remember, 50%, almost 50% of the words in English are that short vowel spelling
that's
pattern.
CVC.
That's CVC.
Can I also
Well, not-
say,
yeah.
one reason we put this 2-syllable before you get to, before you can turn to independent reading, and independent reading is generally considered leveled books. Find a leveled book that doesn't have 2-syllable words in it. They're just so few and far between. So we want to make sure that children know how to attack a word with more than 1 syllable. And we're not saying that they don't have to do unknown words, but they should be able to attack known words. Maybe they haven't read it, but it's in their vocabulary. And then
Lastly, that they can decode 1- and 2-syllable real words with R-controlled vowels and the silent E pattern. So this, to me, would be phonics pretty much, what, about 3/4 of the way through 1st grade
yeah,
in a typical
Mhm,
scope and sequence.
and
But
and-
with good solid
Now,
mastery.
this is the typically developing reader, which is different from the reader who needs to be taught everything. Most of the time, once children know the silent E and are controlled, and they can read those quite easily, they've figured out the code and they get into what's called David Scher's self-teaching hypothesis. Now they can read and their brain is looking for patterns and they figure out the patterns on their own. Doesn't mean they don't need phonics instruction. They still need it. It just means that you don't have to use perfectly decodable books, even when you're
And
teaching
it means
phonics.
that they will start then to learn unfamiliar words on their own
Mhm.
because they
And
have
patterns.
and patterns,
Mhm.
because they have enough basis, first in the automaticity of decoding, understanding how it
Mhm.
works and being able to do it without a lot of thought. And then next, that they have a good basis. of
In your
patterns.
handout, there's a skills map. And just real quickly, we're not here to teach the skills, but there are pre-reading skills that children need before they're ready for decoding, but any decoding instruction, and certainly before they're ready for to read decodable books. And there are phonological skills and there are orthographic, mainly letter sounds and a few high frequency words. Once they get to, they have all these down, then they're ready to read. And we start out, and this is hard to see, I know, but we have short vowel patterns, and then we have some
I think most people know the
fluency.
scope and
Yeah, you know the
sequence.
short
It's
scope and
basic
sequence.
phonics. Scope and
But so
sequence.
basically what we've done is we've gone down here and said, okay, now you're ready for non-decodable text. Once you've gotten to silent E, you've got R controlled, most of the time that would have open syllables before it and CVC. Now you're ready for non-controlled text. What I would say if you're still going to teach some vowel teams, while you're teaching those vowel teams, you want the kids to read some text that are heavy with the vowel teams that you're
Yeah,
teaching.
so
But again,
doesn't
that's
have to be
just-
perfectly
yeah, it
decodable,
doesn't
but
have to
it's helpful to have some
Mhm.
that's reasonably decodable with your new patterns.
So what are general guidelines for reading instruction? All beginning decoding instruction is with decodable books. Language comprehension is primarily through read alouds and other discussion. Once the student shows strong beginning decoding skills, they're ready to read leveled readers or non-decodable text. And they start getting to where they develop language comprehension through their own reading because they can read text that's complex enough. They can read about bears and learn something about polar bears and what they eat, and they eat bamboo. They could learn something new where when they don't have very many, when they aren't able to figure those out on their own with great accuracy, they won't be able to do that. Okay, most of you have seen Scarborough's rote model, and we do have permission to use this, Pam. And so what we've got is you can see that at first, language comprehension is taught separately from decoding. And what we're saying is that when decoding is strong enough to read independently is far up the rope. I mean, you go ahead. You want
I
to
was just going to,
Yeah.
before you go to the next slide, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but finish what you're saying.
go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say, so the green is and Hollis allowed us to color code this, is the language comprehension. So everything that's in the green that's separate right there, that's all going to be oral. And that's where you can use decodable the leveled books, because they're there to help you develop that oral language comprehension. And then the red is your decoding, and that's where you're going to use the decodables to practice the decoding skills. And then following the guidelines, those two things are going to get strong enough that you can start bringing them together. And that's what we're trying to get at with, that's when you can, so this non-decodable text in the middle there, that's really pretty much where we were saying on that reading skills map down there where the red box was after silent E and R controlled. That's
And you guys,
essentially-
once
so-
they get to non-decodable text, you still want to have them read aloud occasionally to make sure they're being accurate.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you guys, you've all seen the posters that say, look at the picture, look at the first letter, these are the strategies. Here's what we say.
Please
Have
burn those.
Have a bonfire. Get rid of those. Those are strategies for vocabulary, for developing oral language. They are not strategies for learning how to decode. They're distractors from learning how to decode. What do you do then if a student doesn't know a word? Well, once he finishes the sentence, go back and say, you read X number of words correctly, or you read correctly to here. Then encourage him to sound that word out. If that word is yacht, you're going to give it to him. You're not going to have him sound it out. But if he can't sound it out, teach him to ask for help. And that's one of the things that we really encourage early elementary schools to do, teachers to do, is when a student can't read a word, instead of guessing, ask them, say, help, please. Michael just
They
says
need to
help.
ask
They
for
need
help.
to ask for help because that helps them recognize when they do or don't need a word, need help. And then I can, as a teacher, can go in and say, sound it out if it's a word that they can sound out, or if it's a word that I don't think they've learned yet, I can say that word is.
Or help them with only
Yeah.
part of the word that
Yeah.
they need help with.
Now, when a student adds a word or skips a word, you can, when he gets to the end of the sentence, say, you got all those words right. If he added a word and you added one, could you please read this again? And you guys always have them read the whole sentence again. That's how they develop accuracy as a habit. They don't want to read it again, and so they'll try to be accurate so they don't have to do that. You guys, oh, we already talked about that. It is so important to have accurate reading from the start. Do not let the kids guess. If they read an A instead of a the, you guys correct it. Every change eventually will have meaning, and reading is a habit. The way we read, the way we decode is a procedural habit. So you guys work on accuracy first, and then work on rate. Don't work on them both at the same time because we can only learn one new thing at a time. So no rate goals. I'm going to real quickly show you that we have on our website at Readsters, this is free. We have some, you can talk about it. You're better at it.
So we have, whoops.
That's okay.
Go back. Okay, this is what it looks like. It's our tracking accuracy with decodable text.
I got it.
You do it for me.
Okay.
So there are directions, and the directions will guide you in how we do this with small group. Okay, you can, and I'm not going to walk through that because we don't have time. And then there's a tracking chart that's set up for you to be able to track. And each student will get 3 tries to read a section of a decodable text, and you can control how big the section is to be appropriate, but they get 3 tries to get it right, all right. And what you're aiming for is to get it on the first try. If they don't get it on the 3rd try, then the direction will tell you that you're still working, and we'll try it again tomorrow.
And you can see this student is Sammy Sample. The first day, the first time he read pages 9 to 14, took him 3 times to get to 100%. But then when he went to read the next section, it only took him 2 times. And the 3rd section, it only took him 1 time. So, and these are cold reads. If Sammy's reading pages 9 to 14, no one else reads pages 9 to 14. That isn't pages 9 to 14, pages 8 to 10, pages 11 to 13, and pages 8 to
The instructions.
Yeah, there. And there's a tracking chart in the packet. Okay, so this is how you set up text. Do you want to?
Sure. So this is a decodable we wrote at some point, and we didn't have pictures, and we're fine with that. But you can see we broke it into reasonable sections, 32 to up to one had 40 words in it. And each section would be assigned, not ahead of time, but first student to read gets section 1, and they have 3 tries to read that 100% accurately. They track on their chart. Then we go to the next reader, and we keep on going like that. And if we've run out of students, then we just keep picking up until everybody's read, till the whole passage is read. And then that's when we can do a literal question or 2, or find the answer in the story is what we like to do, and underline it so they can learn how to skim.
And there's one other thing that I'm going to end with because it's the end of our
Well, let me just show you. You can
okay.
also do this in a already made decodable. Just count the number on a page, or break a page if it has a lot on it into 2 sections, and just pre-number it ahead of time so everybody knows, how many words they're trying to read correctly. And then you can say you got not out of 32, but you got 30 right. Let's go back, fix these 2 words, and try again.
And then what I want to say is that decodable texts are used at the end of a phonics lesson. I had someone call me the other day and say they were going to teach phonics with decodable texts. Decodable texts are not for teaching. They're for practicing after you have taught phonics. If you download the handout, we have some recommendations for decodable texts, ones from Readsters. These
And I
on our
think these
website.
are on our website
And
too. If
then
not, email me.
Something from the Reading League, and that's it because our hour is up. So thank you we got through the essence. Thank you very much for having us. And I will
All right.
share.
Amy, do you want to address that question?
Yeah, there was one quick question about what's
Sure.
better, decodable passages versus books. Do you have a preference? You showed the little chunks
The
with.
first thing I'm going to say is that we work almost exclusively with struggling readers. And we take pictures away because when we get a struggling reader, we know they're a struggling reader. That's why they come to us. And they've already got the habit of looking at the picture. So for us, we will even cover up pictures. But if I were doing this from the beginning, if they can have pictures and not look at them, I don't have
Yeah,
a problem
I
with
don't have a
that.
problem with it. We just don't want them to get distracted with it. But that does bring to mind, as long as you guys are going to the website, possibly to get the packet, also look for article on eyes on the word, where we go and talk a little bit more about how to keep
Yeah,
students looking at the words and not looking up or not looking at the pictures.
it's only about
Um,
2 pages. It's
Well,
not,
they're four. 'cause
oh, there are
it's two
4
articles
pages, but
together.
it's double spaced.
It's not much to read,
Yeah,
but
you'll
it's
like it.
helpful. And we didn't get a lot of time to talk about that. We mentioned it, but it is so important because that is part of the accuracy, is keeping your eyes down. So you actually read what's there. What a surprise.
Anything else?
There were other questions.
We're
It's
Sure.
okay
happy,
to-
If people are willing to hang around.
we're
we'll
happy to
answer.
stay.
Is it okay to send books home for children to read if they're working in decodable books?
Decodable books home?
Well, any books. Is it okay to send
Well,
books home?
That's an interesting one. As working with struggling readers, I do not encourage children to read anything but decodable books that they've already shown me they know how to read with their parents. But then I encourage their parents to read to them.
The non-decodable.
And that's with the struggling readers. If you have a typically developing reader who has demonstrated that they know are controlled.
Well, if
these-
they're at the level, book
then
level,
you can send one
then
home.
you can send them home.
But our experience is that teachers have a hard enough time knowing how to teach struggling readers. Parents, we just can't expect them to do that.
And I would say at the, particularly at the begin reading, when you're in the CBC stage, parents shouldn't be expected to be having their students read to them at that level. That's when they should still be reading to them, and much better time spent. Let's read together, and then I'm going to talk to you about what we read. As long as the parents can read, of course, recognizing that not every parent will be able to do that. But that same parent couldn't read the decodable or tell them if they read it right.
All right. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Jeannie, do you?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I mean, we had 300 on this call, which was amazing, and they're still hanging in there yet with you. So this has been wonderful. And if you have any questions, I know you can go to your website, Readsters, and there's a lot of information there, and your email addresses as well.
And you guys, please, we are very happy to answer questions. Michael used to be the head of a concrete construction company, and I used to be an investment banker. And if we didn't want to help children, we would still be making money. So we left those careers, both of us, because we worked with adult readers and adult struggling readers from America who went to school here, and we want to get rid of the need for adult literacy for English speaking people who went to school here.
Yep.
So that's our goal, and we want to help you if we can.
So
All right, I think that's a wrap
Thanks.
then.
thank you.
for
Thank
having
you.
us.
It's great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Shall we stay
you.
on and debrief or anything?
If you'd like to.
Okay.